All right, hello everyone, and thanks for tuning in today. We're going to do a little automation project with Solid Edge. Solid Edge is a mid-level mechanical CAD package written by Siemens. And what we're going to do today, a little project overview. A user would like to rename the occurrences here in the assembly, just the first list, just not diving into the sub-assemblies. So here we have a very simple solid edge assembly. We'd like to have the first one. I'm going to tap F2. We can go ahead and rename this manually. So we want the first one to be 10, and the second one will be 20, and so on, except the ones that are set to not show up in the bill of materials. So you could say here, don't show in reports and parts lists. So that's a requirement. And certainly you can change the display in Pathfinder here, but the user, would like to be able to rearrange some of these. You can drag and drop components for mostly just for convenience. It doesn't really impact any of the relationships or the assembly mates or constraints or anything like that. So what do we need to get started? We need Visual Studio. That's free from Microsoft. I'm using 2017 here, I believe. And there's also some, if you don't have Solid Edge, you can go and download a trial of it. There's a subscription plan, which is very economical to get into Solid Edge, or you could just buy it outright and own it if you want to. There's a great community in GitHub where Jason Newell has provided an interop for Solid Edge, which we'll use to easily get references to the Solid Edge programming interface. There's also a community module that you can download. He has a great tool called Spy, which I'll show you. And there's a big bunch of samples, which will be very useful if you continue to do this kind of work. VB.net, C#. So great stuff there at the website. So we're going to start by creating a new project. And I'm going to do a win form. So what I want a project. It's just an executable. It's going to be headless. No form. Don't need the form. It's just, I just want to click a button in the software. We'll have a little text file that will control the settings. Click a button, job done, fast, simple. We don't want to get things too complicated here. So I'm going to just delete that form. And I'll add a module, which is just pure code, and in here we'll do a submain, and in the project I'm just going to tell it it's no longer this is a little quirky. I'm not quite sure why you have to do this. You kind of poke around at things a little bit, and so that submain shows up in the list. And so I'll go ahead and just make sure that this is working. We'll put a little breakpoint on there, hit F5 or hit the start, and sure enough it's starting off in the submain, so that's great. So now we need to add a reference to the Solid Edge API, and the best way is with Jason Newell's tool. So we're going to go to the NuGet package manager. We'll do a browse so that we can search the internet. And we need interop.solidedge. The community package adds some extra functionality. Check that out sometime. We don't really need that today. I'm going to try to keep things as simple as possible. And we're just going to add this and install that. Probably should have named it something a little more interesting. It's okay. So first, we need to get a reference to the application. I've got some little code snippets here all ready to go. So what that NuGet package did for us is it brought these types in so that we can get IntelliSense, and we won't have to keep looking up documentation. This is just a .NET thing here where we can import. That's the only other import that we really need. This is really just kind of boilerplate way that .NET attaches to a COM application. So Solid App is the name of our application. It's just, it's really pretty simple code. So we need to enumerate through the occurrences. Now the way I know that, if I open Jason Newell's Spy tool, this is a great tool. If we look at the active document, it's a way to interrogate the automation layer of the current running application. And if I get to my active document, and there's the occurrences collection, there's 23 of them, and you see, let's see, the first one, we named it. Remember the 10 dash bracket, so it's item 1. So keep that in mind. It's a 1 based index, and there's the name. So we are going to be renaming. We're going to be setting the name, but we're also going to be looking at the include in BOM property to see if it actually is included in the BOM. So let's see. To save you some of the pain of watching me type, I've got some little boilerplate code here. So we're declaring a variable for the active document of type assembly document, and using the reference to Solid App .active document. So that's what that NuGet package does for us. It gives us these nice references and IntelliSense, and we'll just declare an occurrences collection variable and one for a single occurrence, and here we're just assigning the current occurrences collection to that variable so that we can work with it. Pretty simple. Next, we're going to need a couple of integers just to keep track of the index and the incrementer, and then we're going to have to get somehow I want to get these settings, and I think a text file is really easy, so I'm just going to add a new item. Nothing too fancy. So it's going to start at 10 and increment by 20. We'll save it. We're going to expect this to be in the same folder as the executable, so I want to make sure the setting is to copy always to the output folder, so it will be in the output with the executable. And then we're going to create a little subroutine here that will essentially read that text file and get those values, and that's get settings. So super simple little private sub, private, nobody else needs to read from it. It's a sub, so it doesn't really return. But what we're using is the byref keywords, which allow us to change what is passed into the sub. So we're going to read all the lines into a string array, and we're going to parse out the start and the increment. So that's just getting a couple of integers from a text file. Super easy. So that's the get settings. And now we need to iterate over the collection. So let's examine this. We're going to use a for loop. We're starting at 1 because we saw the index starts at 1, and we're going to top out at the count, the total occurrence count. at this one level. Now this is a little unique notation. You'll see this in the help documentation where instead of just directly referring to the index, you use the occurrences.item, and then that's how you grab that one element from that collection, and we're assigning it to the OCC, which is just a variable for a single occurrence. Then we're going to check it to see if it's included in the BOM, and if it is, we're going to set the name. And then we're going to increment by whatever the increment value is that we got from that little text file, and move on. So then we do need a set name function, and I've gone ahead and written one of those before also. This is probably where the most code is. So set name is a private function, and it's going to return a string. We're going to pass into it the current name of the occurrence, and whatever the index is. Maybe if we step through this, it'll be a little clearer. So we've got a breakpoint at the submain, and we'll let me resize this window a little bit here so that we can see solid edge at the same time. So I'm going to just hit F5 and then F10. We get hooked into the running application. We've got a reference to the current active document. We've just declared a variable there. We'll actually assign the variables to the current occurrence collection, and we'll jump into our get settings. Apparently I've done that correctly, so it's read in 10 and 20, and just to make sure that's an integer. And now we're going to iterate or enumerate. So there's the first occurrence. It is included in BOM, and then we're going to take the name, pass that into our function. We're going to jump into our function and split that out so it does contain. So we're using the split function on the string object, so that's going to make an array for us. And it's this first one actually has the correct format, so we're gonna go ahead and jump into the else, and we do a test for is numeric. Now that's a VB, I believe that's Visual Basic specific. If you're using C#, you might have to roll your own, or maybe there's one in C#, I can't remember. And we're going to test to see if that's numeric, and if it is, then that's the protocol, you might say. So if it's a number followed by a dash, it's assumed that the first number is the actual index. So we'll just set that and we'll return. So that should actually have done nothing because it was already preset. And then we'll increment, and then we'll jump in again. So this time the name parts, there's only one, so that means there's no dash. So what we're going to do then is just add the index, which has been bumped to 30, and we'll set that name so you can see that that's 30 now. And it's going to just continue to do it. Let's just run it. I'll just continue. So there we go. It prepended the index. Now it skipped this one because that was set to include in BOM equals false. That was a requirement. And then if we go and change the settings, let's change this to 1 and 1, and just save it and just run that again. It appears to be doing just what we want. So that's really great. So let's just go ahead and that's built. If we look at the path where the file is, so there's where the output is. Notice that it does output this this DLL that is part of that package that we downloaded. That's just one of these boilerplate things that you could just leave. And there's the actual executable right there. And there's our little settings file. So you could actually just double click it here, but there's a really kind of a nicer way to do that. So this is the folder. I'm just going to copy that in my clipboard and come back here to Solid Edge and customize the quick access toolbar. You can customize, you could put the button up here, or you could put it on your ribbon if you want to. And we'll choose macros and browse. And then there's our Windows app. We'll add that over and we'll close. I guess I do want to save my theme. So a theme is just your arrangement of buttons here. So there's our little program, and let's just try it on a fresh file. Notice there's a little lag here. Sometimes when you're working in a development environment, things get a little clunky, I guess you might want to say. Sometimes if you break a lot of times in your code, you don't finish, things don't get cleaned out. So it's pretty good to kind of restart the app every once in a while during development. So let's just start fresh. Sometimes it'll hang on to memory if you break out of your code. Doesn't get a chance to really clean up well. So there's our vanilla file. We click our button, and there it goes and renames all the occurrences based on. Now remember, I didn't actually come in here and say, you know, do not display in BOM. That's why it's not skipping that one. So there you go. A quick little automation project using Solid Edge, Visual Studio, and VB.net.